Um, Great. Well, it's lovely to be able to chat to everyone today. Really cool to, see what you guys are doing. I think you're part of an amazing program. I wish I had it when I was starting or before I started. And yeah, there's absolutely no substitute for doing. A little bit about me, I'm a civil engineer by profession. I've got a master's in transportation engineering. Traditionally, I should be doing a PhD. I should be in my field consulting or at a university, writing papers no one reads, becoming a professor. But I chose to start a business to learn all the things that I wasn't being taught at traditional academics. So suddenly having to go to investors to raise funding, I had to learn what a financial model was. Learning about product because the first development team you hire lets you down, and suddenly you think to yourself, but do I have to end up coding because to get this thing out the door? Launching products that you think are amazing that no one downloads, no one uses, and you think to yourself, if only I had known that before we spent 6 months getting excited about it. And then I think it's been more than 10,000 hours of entrepreneurship for me. It's been six years full time since I left engineering and started this journey. So it's more than 10,000 hours. And I think probably 2,000 out of the 10,000 were really impactful. I just didn't know, and I still don't quite know exactly which 2,000 of the 10,000 hours that you're going to spend is going to give you 80% of the results, the Pareto principle. And I think that's what programs like this are meant to try and help you, that instead of it being an 80-20 principle, maybe 30 or 40% of your time can be spent on what's really important, on what's going to drive your business, and on what's going to give it its results. So as a self-taught, bump your head, do it and learn, and do it and learn entrepreneur. I just wanted to kind of start out by saying, I think each one of you guys have an incredible opportunity to, if you get 5% more, 10% more probability of success, that's what makes the difference in entrepreneurship. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try and share a presentation. And hopefully not show you anything too secret. Let's see. Cool. So that should go full screen. Someone nod if they see a full screen. Great. Okay. So I started a company called GoMetro, and I started it on a train platform when my train was late. And I didn't know what time it was going to come. And I thought to myself, how hard can it be to tell me when my train is coming? We had this new thing called a mobile phone, a smartphone. And it would have been really useful to know when that train is or is not coming. You guys are spoiled because you have, 9292 in the Netherlands. And you've had it for years. So you don't know what I'm talking about. But in the rest of the world, you don't know what time your train is coming, and you don't know what time you're going to get to work. So you can only start planning your day. You can't have meetings before 10 a.m. because you honestly don't know if you're going to be at the office before 10 a.m. So it's a ridiculous problem that we're just not able to solve in a lot of cities. So GoMetro is set up to bring flexible mobility to cities. As we've developed, when we started the business, you basically had a few choices. You had train, bus, car, or taxi. Then the year we launched, we got Uber. And then 2 years after that, we got bike share and scooters and it's like hoverboards, and you don't know, like elevated drones are coming next. So transportation is disaggregating. And we need a central platform of management more than ever before. So what we've set out to do 5 years ago is build a multimodal flexible mobility platform that collects mobile and data tools into one platform that allows any city to use real-time sensing, machine learning, spatial analytics to essentially change the way the city moves without infrastructure investments. So traditionally, you need to build a massive bridge. You need to build a new railway line. You need to build $1 billion worth of investment to get a city to change the way it moves. What we were looking at GoMetro is, can we use technology and data to change the way cities move? And as an entrepreneur, choosing a big, hairy, audacious goal that's really, really difficult is going to keep you motivated when times are tough. If your big, hairy, audacious goal is we want 1 billion users, well, guess what? If you're not Mark Zuckerberg, you're going to get disappointed. And that big, hairy, audacious goal is not going to motivate you. It's going to actually demotivate you. If you're going to be like, well, we want to have $500,000 of net profit after tax in year 3, that might be ambitious, but it's not a big, hairy, audacious goal that's going to get you out of bed every day. So choosing your big, hairy, audacious goal means you're going to wake up for the next 6 to 10 years, and that's what you're going to try and do every single day. And at GoMetro, we are still chasing the objective of what we want to build, of flexible mobility. So that would be my first kind of takeaway. Then you need to ignore conventional advice about who you need to hire. You don't necessarily need a head of marketing that has a marketing degree, a head of business development who has a law or an accounting degree, a financial officer that's got a chartered accounting degree. Those things help get the boring stuff done, but the interesting stuff comes from like surprising places. So I've often found in where we hire from, and this is the GoMetro team back in Cape Town, is like the younger the person, the more open they are to the crazy idea. It's the kind of the guy with 10 or 15 years experience that's really good at a core competency, but he's closed his mind to the way the world can change because he's never seen it before. And the younger generation is more open to technology, more open to the possibility. And so surrounding yourself with optimists and people who want to change the future is a great thing. Also, if you look in the picture, there's 1 or 2, graybeards in there. We were very lucky. In the middle there, there's an old guy. He's retired, and he's the chief engineer. He was the chief engineer of the city of Cape Town. So he ran an organization with like 4,000 people building the city's transport system, and he joined us so that we could gain his wisdom. And a quick hack as an entrepreneur is you're going to like hire from the retired ranks. You bring them on as contractors. They come with no commercial expectation because they've made their money, they're retired, they're bored, but they really want their knowledge to go into the world still. They really want to mentor, they really want to coach. So if you're in an organization where everyone's in their 20s, you're all immature, you're all like you don't have life experience, and you're all going to kind of have conflicts that are unnecessary. Having 1 or 2 older guys that it's not about ego, it's not about like achievement and accomplishment. That's a really, really solid hack to your organizational culture. Hiring the right old guy can really help your business, and they're not expensive because they're retired. A lot of them will do it for free. I mean, Dave, when he started with us for the first 3 months, he basically came on a Monday, came on a Wednesday, came on a Friday, and we just fed him coffee and biscuits, and that was his pay. So yeah, so take a look around at your networks and cross-pollinate your culture. The other thing you'll notice, which is unusual for a technology business, is not everyone is male and white. And we took quite a conscious decision to bring in as many cultures, languages, and viewpoints as possible. So our development team and our company is very multiracial, very multilingual, multicultural. We didn't only hire on background and of diversity, but also culture. So we have engineers from Rwanda, from the Congo, from Zimbabwe, from Kenya, not just South Africa. And so when we build a feature, we can immediately think, how will this work in Nairobi? Will this thing work in Lagos? Is this thing going to transfer to a new culture. And so like embracing diversity is another key strategy. So the problem that we're trying to solve is traffic getting worse in our cities. Cities have grown, and a lot of cities around the world have chosen to put the car first. Again, you guys wouldn't know what I'm talking about. You know, you put the bike first. But around the world, you know, cities kind of, their only solution is to build more and more roads. And so our change of view that we're trying to bring to the world, the theory or the philosophy, the hypothesis, is that we need to move from an asset-based, I call it a supply-side planning regime, to a demand-driven, right fit, right mode, right performance, mobility as a service regime. A lot of the thinking is modeled on the Dutch view and the Dutch way. You know, you guys do own cars and you do use them, but for the right purposes. You use rail for the right purpose. You use bikes for the right purpose. So what we're trying to bring about is what are the tools and the technologies that we need to move every city in the direction of mobility as a service. Now, how we do that is both at a tiny micro level, one phone by one phone by one phone. Our app, our rider app, GoMetro rider app, gives us information on how people are trying to move, and it gives those people information on what best mode to choose. At a macro level, we have tools that plan the whole city and model the whole city. Right now, we've just finished a piece of work for Cape Town, where we've modeled the entire city and tried to understand how COVID is going to spread through the transport network. So that's a 3 million person project versus a 1 person app project. Where the user is 1 person or the user is an entire government. Our technology is trying to solve many problems for many people, with the gateway being a journey planner. Across South Africa, we've had great success in implementing the technology. I can spend an entire hour just explaining how startups can work with government and how startups can use governments and large institutions to really launch yourself and build a defendable moat. I won't spend the hour doing that, but that certainly is something you shy away from. You know, you can't do an MVP for the transport department. But maybe you don't have to do an MVP if the transport department really wants this thing and is willing to fund it and pay for it. The question is, once you're done with that MVP and you delivered the project, how do you build a business out of it? And that's where a lot of consulting firms, a lot of technology firms lose the plot, in that they deliver solution like a consulting house and not necessarily like a platform thinking. We've raised $1 million in seed funding to date. We're currently busy working on a round that will bring in about $4 million. So we're actively building our enterprise, building our business. And the people that you surround yourself at a management level, so we spoke about the kind of team dynamics, but we've been able to build a really strong board and a really strong management team. And as an entrepreneur, what's really important is that you get out of the way of your business as quickly as possible. You know, your job is to be the captain of your ship, knowing what's going on in the ship, not the guy shoveling coal, then chopping tomatoes and onions for the lunch, then going to look at where the iceberg is, then coming back and plotting the course. Your job is to find as quickly as possible people that can do that. Now, when you're starting out, you pay for that through equity, and you hire managers or you bring on co-founders and you pay them in equity because you have no cash, and that's fine. Just be really careful and really sure that you all are aligned on the same timelines, that this is going to take 6 to 10 years, that this is going to take it all out of you. You know, you can't have a co-founder relationship where you're the guy working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. The other guy knocks off at 5 and goes home to spend time with his family, right? That's not going to work. You can't be the guy that is willing to put in the effort and the other guy not so much, or girl. So I've been really fortunate in being able to have a really strong management team around. especially when the business needed me to kind of jump on a plane and go to a new country for 3 months. You can't run your business and take new opportunities on if you haven't managed yourself out of your business, out of your day-to-day. And so delegation is so important, and learning how to trust your people. So in the organization, you know, we've got a guy that takes charge of product. I ask him if we can get stuff done. I don't tell him as CEO, this is what we're going to do. I ask him what's possible. The same thing goes with our projects and our mapping work, our commercial activity and business development relationships, our technology development and systems development. As a CEO, you learn very quickly that the path onto the rocks is when you tell your team, we're going to do this no matter what, and it's going to work. We're going to make it work. Because you can only do that so much before you totally lose credibility, and the team just gives up because they can't keep the promises you're making. It's so important that if you're going to delegate, you delegate and you listen to your team. That when they tell you we can't make the deadline, don't say, well, we're just going to work weekends and we're going to, you can only do that so much before you run out of goodwill. So when you delegate and listen. Also, when you want to, are we taking questions, or are we going to take questions at the end?
Whatever you prefer, Justin.
Cool. I think let me kind of get through my slides, and then we can jump in and talk about the different topics, if that's...
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Then I'd also say, surround yourself with a very strong board as quickly as possible. We were very fortunate, I was very fortunate to get some really serious board members with serious experience to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and to tell me what I don't know, and to tell me how much, like what I've given them as projections, as presentations, as pitch decks suck. You need really serious board members that are going to tell you you suck. Like what you're doing is terrible, because your team's not going to tell you that. Your customers aren't going to tell you that. You honestly need like honest senior feedback, and that's the role of the board. Just a little bit about our business as we've grown. We now have offices in South Africa, in the UK, in America, South America, projects across what I call the Atlantic box. As we've grown, we've also learned that the hiring practices that we've done in person scale remotely. So what I look for in people I hire in Cape Town is what I look for internationally. And when I don't get that, that's when I make hiring mistakes and I get things wrong. We've been able to build practices by hiring for values and not for competence. So I don't care if you're an engineer, an architect, a lawyer, your education is not important. It's relevant, but not important. What's important is if you put your team first, if you work really hard, if you're passionate about mobility, if you're passionate about the environment, if you want to make a difference. Those are things I can use. And then we can look at what your competences are. So that's what has helped us, I think, being able to scale over a few years into multiple territories, languages, and cultures. Then our product is complex. I'll skip that and just show you like really key lessons that I've learned. So what's always been really important is to understand your customer. In our case, we call it the passenger, but to understand your customer across their entire journey. You know, we're in the business of journey planning and mapping and understanding transport, but understanding that customer is really critical. And so for the kind of lecture today, I wanted to just bring you guys a few ideas. So I've always used this idea that startups are fighter pilots. All right. If you go and work for a corporate, if you join the kind of corporate world, you're an airline pilot. You kind of have a manual this thick that you must stick to. You probably kind of, have all the amenities. You don't really have to worry. You just have to do one thing really well, and that's fly a plane. Whereas a fighter pilot has to respond to all sorts of different opportunities. So, you know, air-to-air combat is just constant surprise. It's an uncertain environment. There's rapid and unanticipated changes. You've got a particular burn rate that you've got to manage, and you've only got a window of opportunity to act. So, oh dear, what did I do? Oh, sorry, guys. There we go. So when you start your startup, there's only so much money, time, and resource that you have available, including goodwill. And you got to decide how to spend your ammo. So also your market is always changing. When we started the business, it was rail, car, bus, taxi. Those are your options. Then you got Uber suddenly, then Uber X, then bike share and scooters and lines and birds and jumps and all sorts of weird names start popping up. So your market is always changing. What's interesting about GoMetro is that our vision and our objective, that slide that I showed you about our vision, that slide's been on our wall for the last 5 or 6 years. The vision hasn't changed, even though the market is adjusting and changing. This guy, John Boyd, there's a book about him. He's the guy who invented maneuver warfare. And it's a really interesting approach to fighting that I think is very good, especially in the time of COVID, for all of us to take on board as CEOs of startups. And that's to observe, orient, decide, and act. So it's a 4-step process that you can do in, like you do on, maybe on a daily basis, you can do on a quarterly basis, you do on an annual basis. But the whole idea is that you need to take in as much information from as many sources as possible. And that's why if you don't have a diverse team, if you're all from the same school or the same background or the same church or the same cluster of understanding, you're not going to have as much of a wide view as if you have a diverse team. You also want to take into account different decisions and be able to understand those decisions before you take them. So having a team that you delegate to and listen to, having a board that you listen to, that team and that board, you're always dancing between keeping your board happy, who wants to see the business grow, and keeping your team happy, who want particular, certain things like safety, security, certainty, not a change in direction. And as a CEO, you're always stuck between the two. You know, the board wants to see direction, firmness, action, and your team wants to see action. And sometimes those two things are in two different directions. And you're going to have to make a decision and act on it. And how do you succeed? So airline pilots have it easy, right? They kind of have every instrument. They can take their time. There's all sorts of autopilots. This is kind of like a slide I use when I talk to MBA classes, because pretty much everything you've done in an MBA is about how do you get your instrument panel working so that you can make the best decision from a place of authority. Whereas a fighter pilot has like a very, very tiny view, and he has that much time to make a decision, and the decision he makes is life or death. And so he can't, when you look at his instrument panel, he needs his head-up display to tell him exactly what he needs. He needs very little, he has very little opportunity for information to come in. So he can't do a top-down market assessment, he can't do a focus group, he can't do all these things that an MBA would love to do. He's got to make a decision pretty quickly. So I take this from Steve Blank, and I'm sure you guys have seen Steve Blank's work. I think it's phenomenal work, but it's really important to remember when you're tiny and small that the work you're doing is searching for a business model versus trying to execute a business model. And so you need to understand, is there a market? Is there a problem? Can I build the solution? Am I the right one to build the solution? So if I was a medical doctor, what am I doing in transport? So the main expertise starts coming into play here versus, well, let's look at the financial model. You know, often I've done the financial model, actually no, always. I've always done the financial model after receiving the term sheet. Like honestly, in raising money, seed money, angel money and seed money, I've often received, and both occasions for $1 million, I received the term sheet on principle, and I figured out the financial model that would justify the deal afterwards. So, but there's a solution, there's market fit, and the answers can come. You can, when the deal's running, you can figure out the model afterwards. What's really critical is to get as close to your customer as possible. And so any project that we're running at GoMetro, my first question is, who is the customer? What is the problem we're solving? Why us? Why now? Why them? And understanding that customer makes every other decision irrelevant. It makes any other determination irrelevant. If there's no customer, there's no business. Cool. So in this process, you want to go through that. And I swear by Steve Blank's startup handbook and the 4 steps to the epiphany. I've got them both at my desk at the office, and they're on my desk. They're not like, on the shelf, they're on the desk because they're really, really, really relevant. But the customer discovery, customer validation, customer creation, and then company building steps, you can't skip them. You can't shortcut them, and you have to apply your mind to them. So there's a time to be rigorous, and there's a need to be rigorous, and it's about customer discovery and customer validation. So asking about the business model, that the business model canvas is a must do. Who are the early customers that we can discover? At GoMetro, every deal we've done always had someone on the other side who really, really, really wanted it. And that's the kind of the person who phones you after hours and says, look, I can't really tell you what you've got to put in your presentation, but look at this. I can't really tell you what's going on, but let me tell you what's going on. Always look for who that early evangelist is, because you need the intel, you need the break to get into the organization. That person is your change agent. So finding your change agent is critical for you to convince any organization that this is worth doing. Get back to discovery. If the answer is no customers, if the answer is no traction, go back. I think we have probably launched more products that failed than products that worked at GoMetro. And that's not a bad thing. That's something I'm quite proud about. It's just that the definition of failure was defined before we launched. We reached the definition of failure early, and we stopped the product and the project. And what's interesting is we've never resurrected any of those products. So it's not that the time wasn't now, we've got to do it again. Sometimes it's just a bad idea. Another trick that I've learned is really listen to the customer. And we're launching a fleet management product. And there's something we discovered in the process that actually defines our sales strategy. And it goes like this. We're trying to find, what happens is, if you have a trucking business, a business with logistics and trucks, what happens is you start with 10 trucks, maybe 5 trucks, 10 trucks, then 20 trucks, you get some more work, and then it's 40 trucks. And maybe you are the fleet manager, and your business partner is maybe your wife or your son or your mother or your father, a relative you're not paying. They're the person with the spreadsheet busy managing the fleet on a spreadsheet every night. So they punch in all the orders and you're good to go. And that works up to 40 vehicles. But after 40, you can't use a spreadsheet to plan your business anymore. And your business starts breaking. And between 40 and 200 vehicles, there's no real software that you can afford to help you plan better. And that's the gap that we're trying to fill with our product. Now, I've described not a top-down, there are 100,000 trucks in South Africa, there are 20,000 in the sector, we're going to go after 5% of the market. None of that nonsense. But it's literally like, I need to find the truck owner who's very worried about his business because it's grown faster than he can afford. So how we sell is to profile businesses, and then when we reach them or when we meet them, we ask them, so how did you start? How many trucks did you first have? Was it, oh, it was 2, oh, it was 5. And then how did it grow? And do you find that like spreadsheets don't work for you anymore? And asking these questions, leading the customer on the journey, is now not selling. It's listening to their problem and listening to them tell you the problem you want them to tell you, because you've got the solution. And so in our sales calls, we train our people to spend 60 to 70% of their time listening and only choosing leading questions, or only choosing, well, let me show you this, as a way to get the product in front of them. It's a different way than let me spend 70% of the time selling to you. And then we test our hypotheses, and we're on kind of continuous discovery. And then the last kind of lesson I'll give you guys is, in my experience, just what I've learned is, I've wasted a ton of money obsessing about product management practices. And there's this disease in software development around product management. Now, if you are a 200-person organization and you've been in business for 10 years and you have 10 products, then you need a product management function. But as a startup, you generally find these product specialists floating around the market, and they just waste your money. Because what they do is they come in, and because they're like product managers, my job title, they don't code and they don't sell. So all they can do is project manage and plan. So guess what they get all of your people to do? Project manage and plan. And if you blink, your salespeople are busy writing customer specifications and product specifications from the customer view. They're not out there talking to customers. And your developers are busy writing product specs as well. And suddenly your entire organization is ground to a halt. You're not moving because you introduced a little layer of management called product management. And so I'm happy to kind of, be yelled at for this, but I've honestly wasted an enormous amount of money in our business having a product manager layer lead our business, like our software and product development, because the salespeople stop selling, the developers stop developing, and you lose touch with your customer. So be very, very careful about when you scale up product management, product specs, like all of that stuff. If you do it too early, you burn cash with no value. And the same thing goes with sales as well. When you start hiring salespeople and scaling the organization, it's normally when you've raised a round of funding and your investors want to see growth. I beg you, spend 3 to 6 months ignoring your investors' questions about when you're going to spend their money, and figure out the perfect salesperson. If it means that you hire and fire and hire and fire and like recruit probably, find the person who's going to represent your business for the next 5 to 10 years as a sales lead. That person needs to hire your salespeople. It's not the CEO's job to hire the sales team. It's the CEO's job to be the first salesperson, to be the master salesperson, and to be the chief salesperson in day 1 to year 1. But when you raise money and the investors want to see headcount and they want to see revenue growth, tell them to get lost until you find the right head of sales. When you find the right head of sales, that guy or girl that fits the DNA, is in it for the long term, has the values, that person can hire the salespeople to come, because that person will look for people like them, will try and find people that match them. And that person will ultimately bear responsibility to you, because if it goes wrong, you're going to have to fire that person. And the key lever you pull as CEO when the plan is not working and you need to go back to the market and get funding, your investors want to hear either we're hiring a new CEO, which is not ideal, or we're hiring a new head of sales because the last one just didn't work out. So little tip here is invest in that head of sales role, because it becomes a very useful scapegoat when things don't go well. I totally agree with Steve Blank that often we sit in rooms and we're all smart and we all have opinions until you go into the market and you listen to what the market has to say. So get out the building. I'm happy to kind of, stay in touch with everybody. My email's there. And I'm happy to, give some short fire advice. If you want to hop on a call, tell me your problem and I'll tell you, how, if I've ever been confronted with it. And yeah, I mean, very, very happy to add value and do that. I will close just by telling you guys that, I'll stop share with that. Where's my mouse? Cool. Yeah. So the Get in the Ring experience totally changed our business. It exposed us to the global stage. It, as an emerging market business, you kind of always don't think that you're as good as, a Dutch business or an American business or a British business. You kind of have this inferiority complex. And Get in the Ring showed us that we actually, our ideas, our passion, our energy, and our skills compare and compete with the best in the world. So it was really an important moment in our journey to take the stage, be part of something as brilliant as that, and be validated by the response of the crowd, the investors, the judges, etc. So, I can't tell you the dollar amount of business I got from or funding I raised from that particular experience, but the self-confidence and the validation and the kind of, it's something I always treasure. And when I feel low, when things go wrong, when I'm disappointed and when things suck, it's one of the things that keeps me kind of warm and going, is remembering I'm part of this community and this community validates and loves me. So yeah, really, really very happy to always be part of this network and give back. And with that, I'll take all your questions.